set, Tasi.
Okay, Mayor, you're good to go.
Okay, this is October 15th meeting. It's a special council meeting to talk about the 2021 budget. And it is hereby called to order. I will call the roll just to document that all are here. Councilmember Murphy,
Here.
Councilmember Davies,
Here.
Councilmember Risberger,
Here.
Councilmember Lepari Shu. Did we lose her? Oh, no. Okay, we'll get back. We'll get back to that. Councilmember Carson,
Here.
Councilmember Harrington,
Here.
Councilmember Rafter,
Here.
Councilmember Drenick.
Here.
Okay, I think Katie Lepari Shu was on with us before, I thought. She may have had a problem.
I don't see her now. I don't even see
No,
her.
okay. All right, she may have had a problem. I'm sure she'll tune back in. So we will get going, and I will turn the meeting over to Joe. Are you going to lead us?
Yeah, actually, I think what we're going to do is kind of work together, Janine and I, just because of the amount of stuff that we had to prepare and cover. So we're going to kind of work together. It's going to be teamwork tonight. So, and actually, I think, Janine, if you want to say some things first.
Hey, thank you. The first question I have is who here did not see the Waterworth presentation that was done Tuesday night at the Finance Committee meeting? Did anyone? Okay, if you have not seen it, I highly recommend that you do see it. It's very worthwhile and it will educate you a lot on the waterfront. And just to start the meeting off, as we've discussed many times throughout the year, and as we all know, the challenges have been great as we continue to be affected by the pandemic. And unfortunately, those effects are probably going to continue into 2021. Since March, we've had regular meetings updating on the estimated revenue losses, possible savings, and how the pandemic is affecting each of our funds. And bringing those challenges into the budget process is a unique challenge within itself. For the probability factor is not clear as it was as in the past. We're not able to predict as closely as we normally do. But I'm confident that we'll succeed at meeting the challenges, and we've done it throughout the year, and we've done it so many times in the past. But now begins the decision-making process, part of the budget, and we've gathered all the requests from the department heads. We've estimated revenues, we've estimated fund balances, we've received important rates such as our health insurance, our retirement rates, and we've taken all that information and we've started to put the budget puzzle together. And this is a part where we meet the challenge of figuring out our priorities, the possibilities, and balancing not just the budget, but balancing the services that we're going to provide to our community with the costs. And we all know that the budget process is complex, and there's lots of numbers, there's lots of information, and it requires immense time and efforts on everybody's part. And I want to thank everybody involved. I also know financials are not the most exciting documents to read, but that's why we're here. I am excited this year about meeting with you all tonight to dig into the details and the possibilities of balancing the budget. I'm very proud to say that we're ahead of schedule from last year. And I'm also proud to say that even though Joe and I are providing high-level information tonight, we're also prepared to provide line-by-line detail for anyone who wishes to review it. And I'm sure after tonight's meeting, those lines will probably be modified, but please know that the detail is available. And as Joe and I have offered many times throughout the year, any questions or concerns anybody wants to meet one-on-one, just please let us know. We have received a few questions via email, but we again invite and encourage you to bring us any of your questions or concerns. When we offered back in July to have budget meetings twice a month, the council had decided to choose 1 month per meeting just because your schedules are so full. And so I'm hoping that one goal tonight is that we can approve the tentative meeting dates as shown on your screen. And I'm hoping, Joe, are you sharing your screen?
Oh, sorry, not yet. I'll get it going. There you go. Sorry.
Okay, so you will see, we've discussed these dates before. October 15th, which is today for the initial draft budget. Draft budget to the council in 2 weeks on the 27th. November 17th will be the second council meeting in November where we'll lay the preliminary budget. November 24th will be the anticipated public hearing, and adoption will happen on December 2nd. So now, unless anybody has any opening questions, we can get started. And Joe?
Do you want to talk about, Ginny, do you want to talk about these dates while you have them up?
Yes, we can if you would like, or we could come back to it after the council's had time to think about it, but we can discuss it now if you would like.
It's up to you.
Okay.
Harry, have you in the past, you and the council met on these particular dates, or is it just that there's the transfer of paper?
No, there's nothing special about these dates. This is just, as far as I know, these are for ongoing discussion
Yeah.
and decision making.
Yeah, Mayor, the only dates that are guided by the charter is the preliminary budget for November 17th, the public hearing, which is to be held 1 week before adoption, and December 2nd is the first council meeting in December. So those
Okay.
3 dates are set by the charter guidelines.
All right.
We can
Ginny,
have-
just glancing at it, October 27th,
Mhm.
I have on my calendar is the next meeting of the Police Community Advisory Board.
Okay,
So I don't think that will work.
okay, well, we can reschedule. Everybody can kind of check their calendars. And if we want to have more meetings between now and the 17th of November, that's fine too.
And the November 17th, that's a council meeting. You planning on that being part of a council meeting?
Yes, that is where we have to lay the tentative budget, that at the
Okay.
second council meeting in November.
Okay. And then 24th would be a special hearing just for that purpose?
Yeah, that's the public hearing to be held for the budget, yes.
Okay.
You can choose a different date, but I believe according to the charter guidelines, it has to be 1 week, at least 1 week before adoption.
Okay, that's also a date for the Community Advisory Board for the Police, November 24th.
Okay. All right, let me check the actual wording in the charter. And if everybody else could check their calendars to see what works for them. Mayor,
Jenny, did you want to do that now, or is that something you want us to get back to?
Yeah, you can get back. We have a lot of information for tonight. So if everybody could look at their calendars and email me, and then we can get things set up. And by the end of the meeting, I think you will have decided how many more meetings you would like before the 27th. I don't know if you want another one in a week. But I was hoping to have at least 2 weeks to work on the revisions. Okay, so will everyone look at their calendars and just let us know? Okay. All right, so Joe, take it away.
Okay, so thank you. So tonight we're going to focus on 3 funds: the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund. I know we've spoken about it before. Some of the other funds we have is the enterprise fund, which is our transportation or OPT. We also have a internal service fund, which is the central garage, and there's other funds as well. And we'll have a chance to talk about those, but tonight the focus is on these 3 funds. We'll be going over some preliminary major revenue projections, the expenditures, the deficit that results from those, equipment requests, some reserve detail and fund balance information, as well as some staffing information based on the request and what's included in the budget. So it is a lot of information. We tried to organize it with schedules that are similar through the 3 different funds so that they're kind of easy to reference and they'll be familiar. I apologize if that means that visually it gets a little repetitive, but hopefully that'll be helpful for you. Also, it might be easy. Well, we can certainly take questions throughout the presentation. The only thing I might ask is sometimes if we we get too wrapped up in the general, it doesn't leave a lot of time for the water and sewer. And some of the things that we may discuss tonight may kind of apply across more than one fund. And I guess the other thing is, what we're presenting tonight isn't the final budget that we're asking you to vote on. It's based on the request, as Ginny said. So it's kind of our starting point, and this is where we really start to get into it. So with that, unless there's any other questions, I'm going to turn it back to Ginny just to start with the revenues on the general fund. Oh, Ginny, I think you're muted.
Thank you. You will see on this slide, we've reported our major revenue sources. And you will see that for the increase and decrease in property taxes and also the use of fund balances for the 2021 draft, we have left that with no changes and no allocations from fund balance, hoping for guidance from the council members as far as what you would like to do. And on sales tax, what we have done for the estimate, just so you know, we did receive our October sales tax payment, which is for the sales tax collected in the month of August. And that brought our year-to-date loss or decrease from 2019 to 10.41%. And we're about 361,000 behind 2019 as far as our sales tax. So I'm expecting that to continue into 2021, at least for a while. So what I have done is estimated a 15% loss in sales tax revenues. And I checked with the county and they were doing the same percentage. So I wanted to be consistent as far as the county's input because they have a lot more detail on sales tax information than I am able to get my hands on. So that results in a $664,000 decrease in the estimate. As far as the ambulance revenues, as we have talked many times throughout the year, the calls are way down. They have historically for a number of years, they averaged about 2,200 calls per year. Beginning in November of 2019, December, but especially in January, even before COVID, the calls started to drop to 50 to 40 calls per month. So what I've done for 2021 is I've reduced the calls from 2,200 down to 1,600. I'm hoping that it will work its way back up when more activity starts to happen and people start to reopen and things like that. But as a result, I wanted to be conservative and not overestimate. So by doing that, that's a decrease of 575,000. Interest income, as we've talked already this year, the Fed rate is between 0 and 0.2%. So I've drastically decreased the interest that we're going to be earning. The fire contract with the town is by formula. That is based on the 2019 cost. The contract calculation is always 2 years behind on actuals. So we're going to realize an increase of 127,000 for that contract. Our state aid, even though it has not been formally announced, I'm anticipating a 20% decrease in the state aid. The first state aid payment that we received in December, normally we receive about 200,000 in the month of September. We received the other 2 million in December. Our September payment was decreased by the 20%. So I'm going to anticipate that for 2021 also. The all other category, which I just emailed everyone because Len had asked me for a detail on the 1.5. What I did is I went through each line and I looked at the activity and I either made an assumption that it was going to return to normal or it was going to take a while to return to normal. And I would have decreases and increases here and there, and that results in the 212,000. So you will see that the anticipated revenues for 2021 is decreased by 1.8 million as compared to 2020. And 3 major categories, the sales tax, the state aid, and the ambulance make up the bulk of that money. Now, will we maybe have a pleasant surprise? Will sales tax return? Will ambulance activity return? Will we get federal aid for the states to help municipalities and our state aid doesn't get reduced? maybe. But as of right now, I would not want to put that optimistic estimates in front of you to make decisions on. So, so do you have any questions on any of these estimates? No? Okay.
Jenny, I have a question about maybe you're going to get to the next line, the fund balance.
Okay.
Is that state that we budgeted $330,000 from the fund balance last year in order to balance the budget? I don't
Yes.
recall that.
Yes, we did. And I'll tell you what that was used for, Mayor. The biggest bulk of it was for the public safety generator. And there was one other item, I believe.
Okay, I do remember that. Now that you say it, Jenny, I do remember that,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, and it was 130,000 for the generator, 150,000 for the fuel farm, which we ended up not having to spend, and 50,000 for the payroll upgrade, which has not gotten completed this year, so we're requesting it again for 2021. We have made progress on that project, but it will not be encumbered by the end of the year.
Okay, yeah, I do recall it now that you say it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, Jenny, I just have a quick question here. So if I looked at last year's general fund, or actually this year's general fund, we're going to see a loss of $1 million out of the 2020 general fund. Is that correct?
That is an estimate, yes.
Okay, and then you're anticipating a net loss a net loss of 1.8 out of the general fund for 2021. Is that correct?
Well, I'm anticipating a decrease in revenues. The actual deficit, which we're going to get to in a little while, is going to even be greater than that. But we have options to discuss to eliminate that deficit. So
Absolutely. I'm sorry. I should
Yeah.
reclassify that as just in the revenues alone. It's 1.880
yes,
million.
correct. Yep.
Okay.
But I'm hoping, as I said, if things get back on track, if the pandemic calms down, if the college is able to have on-campus students, these numbers will drastically change. But I do not want to anticipate that happening, at least for the spring of 2021. I don't think it would be a fair presentation to you or the mayor to make the assumption that by January 1st, we're going to be back to normal.
Right. Exactly. So if I just read your chart correctly, between the 2 years, it's a $3.013 million revenue shortage.
Well, yes, but that is because we haven't allocated anything from fund balance yet. So that's one of the decisions the council is going to have to make, is how much fund balance do they want to allocate towards the budget?
Correct.
Okay.
Want to make sure I was clear on this.
Yep, you are. Any other questions? Okay, so the next slide is Joe's going to cover the expenditures.
Thank you. So here we've broken these down into some of the broad categories. As Jenny said before, we do have detail available, whether it's by code within those categories or line item detail within those categories as well. So certainly if anyone wants that, please just let us know. But these are kind of the major expenditure areas. And just to run through them quick, personal services relates to mainly our wages, what we pay our people. So our wages, overtime, part-time workers, those kinds of costs. Fringe benefits, includes payroll taxes, health insurance, other insurances, and retirement. Those are the main costs in there. Equipment. Now, keep in mind too, just to reiterate that all of these numbers are based on the initial request from the department. So these haven't been refined. When department heads were given, kind of direction at the beginning of this, they were asked to, submit what they thought they needed, but know that, there's going to be, a closer look at a lot of things, and they need to, while they're developing their requests, think about what items may be possible to cut or have some sort of priority. So when we come back to them, they'll have hopefully some ideas already. So the equipment, you can see, and again, this is comparison between the 2020 budget and the 2021 draft budget as it currently is. Shows an increase of over $2 million. I'll provide some detail for that as well a little later. But the supplies and services, you can see that's kind of everything else that we spend in terms of operations. There's a number of accounts that go into there. Things like postage, utilities, maintenance, any kind of lease agreements or maintenance agreements, purchase services. So it's kind of everything else that the city engages in for operations. Our debt service, as you know, is principal and interest on the debts on the notes and bonds that the city carries. And then transfers, these relate to transfers typically to capital projects. I do want to say that it does not, the $350,000 for 2021 does not include the local match for our DRI, which I believe is around $415,000. So that's 415,000. I think it was for the transit hub, and the hope is that we might be able to get some ATC grants to help cover some of that amount. So but that is not part of that 350,000. Another point to make is, as you may recall, there's been a project replacing streetlights with NYPA. And because of that project and some of the cost savings, we were able to reduce some of the utility costs by about $100,000. And there is going to be a debt payment that's associated with that project, but that $100,000, will go a ways to help paying for that. In terms of the supplies and services, there's items within there. Some of those things may be discretionary, some things may not be. We still need to buy fuel for our vehicles that we use. There's certain supplies that are mandatory. We still have to buy parts for the garage to use. So, there is some discretionary items, but there's always going to be obviously some things that we absolutely need to have. So when we talk about the water and sewer funds as well, you'll see it laid out the same way. And all the categories are going to be similar as well. So I won't repeat all that, but Ginny, I don't know if you have anything to add on the expenditure side, or if anyone else has any questions specific to this for now. We're going to talk about what the deficit looks like in a moment. I just don't know if anyone has any questions now.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so you were mentioning the light replacement project. Are those, and you were saying that there's $100,000 in savings, but that there will be some costs associated with that. Are those numbers figured into the numbers that are in front of us here?
Yes. So the reduction in the utility costs for the $100,000 is included, and then the payments for it are included as well.
Okay, gotcha. So all things being equal, supplies and services went up about $25,000 because of the $100,000 savings.
Yeah, I guess I see what you're looking at. Yeah, if we hadn't done that, the supplies and services probably would be $100,000 higher. But there'd also be a change.
Okay.
For the payment.
Okay. And the payment is involved in the debt service or the equipment?
Ginny, I believe that's the debt service, right?
Yes, it's in the debt service, but because we haven't finalized the debt with NYPA yet, we do not know what our final payment is. So where I've put that money is in what we call our contingency account. And I've labeled it for unissued debt. And I've just made an estimate.
Okay.
We will not know what our actual debt payment is until we find out what the actual cost of the project's going to be. We have an estimate, but we don't have a definite.
But that is included, right, Jenny?
Yes, it's
So
on,
the
yes.
750 is with the estimate.
No,
Okay,
not, no,
gotcha.
yes,
But it could fluctuate.
yes, but.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, you're gonna get into the $2 million in equipment, right?
Yep. We're
At
going to
some
go
point?
over
Okay.
some detail. I think
Okay.
you're provided also with even more detail. I can't put all the detail we provided you on the screen because it would be difficult to read, but But we'll talk at some high level and
And those
then, sorry,
Those are in the emails that were sent yesterday and today, right?
yes, yeah, last night. The
Okay,
equipment
great.
stuff is in last night's email.
Okay,
Yes, Len?
excellent. Thank you.
Yep. Len? Yeah?
Hi, Joe. So before we get into the dream list of equipment, does that represent, or does this entire package that you guys have submitted, does that represent the $892,000 that the department heads worked hard at and reduced their cost overall? So are we looking at it as a package deal, or are you going to highlight where they saved us money?
So I believe what you're asking about is actually related to the 2020 budget year. So those reductions were, applied to this year. Now, as part of some of those reductions, there could be equipment items that were delayed or postponed from 2020 into 21. So some of those items that were postponed in equipment may be included in the 2021 request. I don't know if that answers your question. So in terms of, what the department's heads have cut at this point, this is just based on their requests. I can't speak for them to say, to a person what they've done in terms of have they already made their cuts. My belief is because of the instructions they were given is that they've, included what they believe they need. The equipment, a lot of the equipment may be driven by previous multi-year plans that were, determined. And then we'll be going back to them in the next phase of the development process to kind of look at what's, absolutely necessary and those kinds of things. So it's definitely not a final number.
Okay, I understand. So just for clarity, is that 892,000, that was kind of a blended list of savings from 2021 and 2020?
Well, Ginny, maybe you can chime in because you dealt with more of that at the beginning of the year, but I think that was really the 892. I think that your Len's referencing is from 2020.
Yes, Len, where the 892 savings is showing up is the net loss of $1 million for 2020.
So it would have been higher if it weren't for those cuts.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I can't see everyone. So if anyone else has any questions, please speak up. Okay, I'll move on. We can always come back. So this combines the revenues. It's kind of summarized here that Ginny spoke about, as well as the expenditures that I spoke about. So as you can see, when you combine them together, there's a deficit of almost $5.5 million. A few things is, as you recall, when Jenny presented the revenues, there's no increase in the tax levy provided. That's something that council sets. Also, as shown on this schedule and what Ginny talked about, the fund balance and reserves, nothing's been assigned to those lines right now because, again, that's something that the council decides and sets. So some of those items and other ways to tackle this deficit is we're going to be covering that as well. And we can get right into that, I guess, but I don't know if anyone has any specific questions related to this. It's really just a summary of what we've spoken about. Okay, so with that, I'll hand it back over to Ginny to talk about some of the options we have.
Okay, and looking at all of the puzzle pieces of the budget, these are the topics that we would like to present to you for consideration on how you want to balance this budget. Postponing equipment purchases. I will tell you what our recommendation is to hold off all equipment until at least July 1st of 2021. Give us 6 months into 2021, see how the revenues are, and then we could approve the equipment request at that time. That is something to consider. Or if you don't want to postpone it, how much of reserves or fund balance do you want to use to fund it? Another topic that we can look at is review of staffing levels and current vacancies. We can look at reviewing the payroll and fringe costs and what options we might have there. We can review shared services. For example, we could look at legal services, we could look at IT services, we could look at assessment services. I know we've got the 5-year contract with Rich, but is another municipality also looking for an assessor? So we could just explore different shared service options. Do you want to instruct the department heads to reduce all of their supplies and service budgets between 10 and 20%? If you go up to 20%, that's about $740,000. And as far as revenues, which we do not have in the budget, do you want to think about implementing paid parking? This would not balance the budget in any way, but it could be something that you could start building forward and looking at, get the ball rolling. And, I want you to know when we did have paid parking, and this was years ago, it actually supplied about $60,000 of annual revenue. And then also the tax levy increase, as we've already said that we have not put a tax levy increase in here. And just so you know, our tax cap is about $202,000 for 2021. And it was very ironic. The state controller's office called me today to confirm the credit that we're going to get for the increased rates in our police and fire retirement. And so she was very pleased with the numbers that we had preliminarily had submitted to them. So, and just to give you a little bit of information that for your consideration on the tax levy, and I'm just going to use round numbers. Our tax cap is about $202,000. Say you want to increase taxes by $100,000. That would basically increase a tax bill that was assessed at $100,000 by about just a little over $20. If you wanted to go the full $200,000, it would increase the tax bill about $41. So it's just to give you some perspective when you're looking at numbers, considering numbers. I don't know what range you want to look at. If you only want to increase the tax levy, $50,000, but we need your guidance on what you want to do.
Ginny, may I ask
It
a
would be
quick?
helpful, I'm sorry, Ginny, it'd be helpful if you translated those dollar figures into percentage increases.
Okay, all right, give me 1 minute. I will do that. If you want to move on to the equipment list, unless there's another.
Luke, I think Luke had a question.
Okay, Luke.
Yes, very quickly. So, when you said $41, that's per taxpayer, approximately a $41 increase in the city.
Yes, for a house that was assessed at $100,000.
Okay.
If you increased the tax levy by $200,000.
Right, it'd be $41 annually.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yep, and Mayor, and I'll calculate very quickly the percentage increase.
Yeah, so Luke, just to follow up, if your house is assessed at 150, you'd multiply, if you were looking
Sure.
at 100,000 increase, it'd be roughly $30.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And Mayor, that if you go 200,000, that's a 4.2% increase. And if you go 100,000, it's a 2.1% increase in the tax rate. Just to make that clear, because people I think are more concerned about how the bill is going to be affected. So that would be the effect on the homeowner.
Yeah, and Ginny, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is also impacted by obviously your assessment, but also with the equalization rates. Oh, well, I think we're equalized at 100.
Yes, we're at 100%.
Okay.
Well, the reason it's important to think in percentages, because families or even businesses, look at their revenue change in percentage, to the salary, is their family revenue going up 2%? Is there same thing with the business? So that's why percentages are important to consider.
Understand. Any other questions? Okay, so Joe, if you want to move on to the equipment list.
Yep. So this is again, I think you were provided last night with some more detail. If anyone had any trouble getting it or hasn't gotten it, just let us know. We'll send it out. This is in the general fund for the departments that are indicated, what the equipment requests were. So again, just some high level things. The 50,000 Jenny mentioned was the payroll systems upgrade. Looking at some of the bigger numbers, the fire, that's obviously the large chunk of this. That includes a request for a ladder truck, for an ambulance, and I believe for another engine as well. So as well as some other items, there's other non-vehicle items that they've requested as well there. So so there is some more detail within each of these accounts that you were provided. Like I say, I didn't have the space to put all that in, and if you want to talk about any of that or have any specific questions about any of the other ones, I can try and go over them. But like I say, that's what you were provided last night with. Yes.
Can I ask a quick procedural question?
Sure.
So you had mentioned that those things were sent to us, and so I went looking for them, and I started looking at the list, the equipment wish list.
Yep.
What is the process for asking questions or deciding as a council to hold off on specific items?
Sure.
I mean-
so, sorry.
No, please. I was just going to try to reiterate, but if you know what I mean, then that's great.
I think I do. I'll try, and you can tell me if I'm answering your question.
Okay.
So kind of that's where we're going to go next is, going back to the department heads and going through the budget again and looking at everything. Some direction from council is, would be great. We are going to talk about, some different things tonight as well, other than just the equipment. But I think if the council provides some direction, as Ginny indicated, there was the option of just delaying equipment purchases, no purchases through the end of June. That allows us to see, where our revenues are coming in at, and might give the
Sure.
council an opportunity to then decide, okay, we feel comfortable doing some, whether it's all the equipment or some high priority equipment, or maybe we decide, or I shouldn't say we, you decide that, we're still not there yet, and we want to hold off longer. So that's one approach.
Right.
Ginny, you have
I feel
anything
like
else?
you said it. There are definitely some things. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just didn't know if Ginny had anything else to add to that as far as the process goes.
No, Joe, you covered it very well. It's this is the process that we're in now, Katie. This is where the council starts to make decisions, where you say yes or no, where you approve what you want included in the budget, where you want to say no, we need to hold off on this, and you give us direction by the end of the meeting, and then Joe and I will take those directions and we'll try to make it work. If we can't make it work, we will tell you why. But as I said when I spoke earlier, I really hope you consider postponing equipment purchases at least until July 1st, so we have a good idea of how 2021 is going to work. Luke.
And Ginny,
Yeah,
just to
I definitely think that there are, I think you said it, Joe, some things that seem a bit higher priority. So just let me know. I would love to run. I just went through those and I have some questions about some of the equipment is.
Mhm.
And then also just some thoughts on some of the things that are being requested. So whenever that's like appropriate to have that conversation, I would be prepared to do so. Sorry, go ahead, Luke.
Sorry. I mean, Ginny, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we can go through, if you want to go through some of the details, if you have that available. I know, like I say, I don't have it on screen, but we can just describe it and talk about the amounts.
Sure.
Um,
Sure. So one thing, Luke, do you want to say what you were going to say before I just take over?
Yeah, this is just a quick clarifying question. Ginny, one of the things you recommended earlier was a delay on purchases of equipment purchases until approximately July 1st. Is that the equivalent to the equipment of this 3 million number here, or is that partial part of that 3 million number?
Well, that's what we would need to decide.
Okay.
So if we go down the list and we say, let's hold this off until July 1st.
Okay.
Or if we say this is affordable at this time, that's what we need to go through the list and say, yay or nay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me, Joe.
Yes.
Out of the equipment list, is there anything there that would involve any kind of equipment we would need through the wintertime or the early spring that we can't do without?
So I think if you look at, I just want to see where it is here. Sorry. Do you have the schedule with you, Dave? No? Okay, I'm sorry. So then, in the maintenance of roads, which is the 539 on there, there's a portion, you may recall that in the past, sometimes some of the equipment is purchased between different funds and departments and
Right.
shared. So this is one of those instances. There is a dump truck with a plow, so I would imagine the plow could be of use in the winter. I don't know specifically at this time if the idea was that it's primarily going to be a plow and occasionally used as a dump truck, vice versa, or equal. So we can certainly find that out. Beyond that, I don't recall, last year we did purchase a couple trucks that had plows. So
Right.
I don't know if we're in a little better position in that regard. So in relation to what's used in winter, that's the main thing that I've seen. There's also requests for a street sweeper and a sidewalk sweeper, which I think Greg has discussed previously, as far as, you know, some needs or potential needs or wants. So I could be wrong, but I don't know if the street sweeper may have some use in winter for, you know, light snows and dustings, but I don't know if it's that kind of sweeper or not. So, but I think that's more of a, you know, maintenance, you know, during the summer and non-winter times.
Right.
So
Joe,
beyond
can I jump
that,
in for?
yeah, please.
Thank you. I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to let the members know that I did speak with Greg today to verify if we did postpone till July 1st, if there was anything that would impair any of his goals or his needs. And what he mentioned was one thing that he has to make sure with EFC is the sewer digester, but that's in the sewer fund. But for the general fund, his main request, main priority is the excavator and the camera van. And the camera van is to go into inspecting the pipes. So those are his two main priorities. He said everything else they could delay until July 1st.
I have a question about the camera van. Greg, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
So my question is that, I think that I understand the purpose, right? So you kind of stick a little scope down and you can see the, without having to like dig, you can see the quality of the sewer pipes.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay, like rudimentary, right? Okay. Is there any way to purchase that system without purchasing the vehicle?
Yeah, the system and the vehicle are two separate things. The vehicle's a 1976 Chevy van. We've had a lot of issues with that. It would also serve, the vehicle that we would get wouldn't be just we would try to set it up so it's not just a camera van. It can serve some utility. You know, it can have other purposes.
Okay.
Some other equipment on there. You know, we can send one of our guys off to do a utility mark out or a meter call where they go to someone's house and address another issue. It wouldn't need to be solely used as a camera van as the current vehicle is.
Okay. So wait, so I'm sorry, do we already have this system? Is that what you're saying? And we want to purchase an additional one?
A replacement for the 1970
replacement.
van that we have. And the camera
I see-
system
I
we
see.
have has had some issues. We had to do some repairs on that as well. So we're just
Okay.
anticipating that that's getting close to its useful life.
Gotcha. Okay. But these things can be purchased separately, theoretically, the vehicle and the system. So we could still theoretically, I'm just trying to look for cost savings anywhere, obviously. We could potentially purchase the system at a cost savings and put it on not the 76 van, but an existing vehicle or something that we
Depending
that
on-
we already have or less expensive.
Possibly, yeah. I'll have to look into that some more to see. You know, it depends on the type of system you get, how mobile the system is. If it's completely separate. The way the van works now, it's kind of built in. You know, there's a computer in there.
Okay.
But we can look at that. You know, if we can do it.
Okay. Cool. I mean, that sounds like a very useful thing. So I just wondered because of the way that it's written in the line item.
Yeah, and certainly.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, certainly all of these things are needed at some point, and I'm sure you can push them off a little bit, just push them down the road a little bit. And to Dave's question before, I think it was Dave's question about Whether pushing any of these purchases off would impact winter operations. Not this winter, because if we order these January 2nd, obviously they wouldn't be coming in until later in the year, but they could potentially impact next winter. There's the one 10-wheel dump truck with plow that Joe mentioned would be the only piece of equipment in this list that would be plowing. There's also a tractor with a snow blower for the water plant that would impact that.
Mhm. Can I ask what a hot box thing is?
That's the you might see that being towed behind a small dump truck when the city patch crews out, patching potholes, doing small asphalt repairs. You put the asphalt in there, it keeps it warm throughout the day so that it can be
Oh, gotcha.
throughout the city.
Okay. And is that something that we have and we would be purchasing another one, or is that something we would be looking to add?
It'd be a replacement for an existing piece of equipment. So we would be
Gotcha.
surplusing the old, replacing with the new.
Okay.
Greg, can
thank you.
can I ask a quick clarifying question about the schedule?
Sure.
It says on here, it says like CCTV 1/3, dump truck 1/3. Does that mean we're only doing 1/3 of the payment for this year?
That's because given the nature of the equipment, we'll split the expense between the general water and sewer funds.
Okay.
So for that camera van, we can inspect a storm sewer pipe, which is a general fund expense, or a water, potentially a sewer main. There's some uses for water as well. So we split those purchases, and Jenny can talk more about that too.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So the total cost on that is like $120,000 because we split it in 3.
Yeah, we're actually estimating 125.
Okay, great.
Jenny, can I ask a question about when we're splitting between water, sewer, and then the general fund? Because it's our water fund that's not the reserves are what we're worried about, correct? It's weak.
water-
The
yes, the
water
water-
thing was saying.
Yes, the water fund has the weakest fund balance right now, and you'll see as we go through these reports, it's even going to be weaker in 2021. But again, we have a plan to address that. If you consider rate increases and also, as the mayor said, growth increases as far as customers. But it is good practice and good accounting principles to put the expenditure where the service is provided to the community. And so if it's a general fund activity or a water fund or a sewer fund, it's the proper thing to do is to book where the service is provided. And with DPW shared equipment, historically, it's been 1/3 for each fund. Now, could we not charge it to the water fund and charge it to the sewer fund? Yes, but would that really be proper reporting? I could not support that.
Well, I'm just concerned because we're saying how the water fund's weak and stuff, but yet we're still trying to take money out for certain things. So, I mean, it's just a possibility. I know you don't like it, but you said it could be done.
It could be done, yes.
But I'm just thinking, we might have to think about our stronger funds right now and let our weaker ones catch up. Because until us as a council knows what we're really doing, because we're talking rate increases and possibly tax increases and all that. So I just wanted to know if it could be done. So thanks.
Yes, you're welcome. And I just want to let you know also, I talked with the police chief a while ago, and the downtown camera surveillance system is really in a pretty difficult, sad shape. So I think that would also be a high priority for the police chief, and I just wanted to share that with the committee.
I think he said that's something he's looked at in past years and not been able to get. So.
What would be the proper procedure to ask the department head to prioritize some of the stuff they hand in so we know as a council?
So that's something that, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Joe.
I would say that's something that we could work on, with your direction, and then we could report back to you on.
Thank you.
Just to talk about a couple quick things, David, I think you said you didn't have the information in front of you. The excavator that was discussed, the third of it that's going in the general fund is $8,300 because there's a trade-in. The hot box trailer was $65,000 in the general fund, and the pipeline, the camera van, excuse me, is $41,666 in the general fund. Katie, did you have any other specific questions on any of these?
Well, just a couple of things that I feel like we could save on if folks were amenable to that. The first thing would be in line item A1620. If I'm referring to any of this in the wrong way, please.
Yep, no, you're right.
Let me know. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and just so I mean, if you're, for anyone that might not be familiar, the A is referring to the fund. So our general fund is Fund A. 1620 is those codes are, those are the main account codes. They're set by, I believe it's set by the state comptroller's office. Is that right, Jen?
Yes, correct.
And then there, within our system, we have additional codes that further break it down. But for this purposes, this is, you know, what we need.
Okay, thank you. So I think that the city manager vehicle seems frivolous at this point. Based on the discussions that we're having. I know that's only like $40,000 or something, but there are individual drops in a hurricane, right? And then the other thing, and I'm not sure how folks will feel about this, but the street sweeper, we've just been talking about parking and getting our services to line up with our parking schedule and things like that. And so I feel like while we are still kind of in this phase of inefficiency until we get that figured out, that's probably $350,000 that we wouldn't need to spend right away. I mean, at the very least, I would definitely feel comfortable holding off on that until July or 2022 budget. I mean, I'm just wondering how people feel, because that's like $400,000 if we put those two things together.
I felt the same way, Katie. Actually, I had a list about, particularly with the city manager vehicle. I agree completely. And I also had noted about the street sweeper, and if Greg doesn't mind talking a little bit about that, if he feels it's appropriate, that might be good.
Sure. So the street sweeper for $350,000, that's the large street sweepers you see going around. I had mentioned a few meetings back that one of the older of the two that we have is on its last legs. It has been for several years now. Our guys in Central Garage were able to repair that, so it is functional again. But typically, you know, the way it's been, as long as I've been here, really, out of the two sweepers we have, we're lucky if we have one of them on the road all the time. As I mentioned a few meetings ago, a combination of just being generally not having a ton of staff and having competing priorities, and the fact that one of those tends to be down. They're very high maintenance machines. So anticipating that the older sweeper is really at some point not going to be worth repairing. The little bit younger sweeper also has some problems. Our plan for the future is to try to see if we can get by with having one sweeper that we own and then renting a second sweeper periodically through the year. Because as I said, we don't anticipate getting additional personnel and being able to have two sweepers on the road every day. So rather than owning two, we're thinking we can try to get by with owning one and then renting one as needed on probably the shoulder seasons, you know, and spring and fall when we have a lot more on the ground to pick up, and when we do chip sealing, that sort of thing. So that was our plan going forward. If we could get a new one, surplus the old two, and then rent as needed. To the question, can we push that off? I think, you know, if that's the decision, that's what we'll have to do. I think we can. We have two working now. It's going to continue to incur high maintenance costs and high downtime. But I think in the interest of trying to balance the budget, if that's something that's necessary, then we will make do.
Well, Greg, where are we on the apparatus schedule with the street sweepers?
I don't have that pulled up in front of me. I know that 245, the older sweeper, I think is past due on that schedule. But don't quote me on that. I can look that up again. I believe the younger sweeper is not quite due, but those were on a 15-year cycle, which really is a long time for a street sweeper that runs quite often and the way they are, as high maintenance as they are.
So any further questions or discussion on equipment, or anyone want any more information on any of the items?
Joe, I've got one question. And we were also looking at a smaller sweeper, right, for the sidewalks, and that was going to be used in the parking garage. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's for sidewalks and the parking garage downtown. Obviously, downtown gets a higher level of service than the rest of the city. This would make our operation a lot more efficient. It's not something we have now, so it would be a new piece of equipment. That's the $150,000 estimate.
That was how much? I'm sorry.
150.
Is that something that can wait till July, considering you go through the winter, and that would be cleaning the inside of the parking garage? And I know how that gets over the winter time.
Yeah, I think just ultimately it's up to the council how much you want to spend on equipment, and we'll prioritize accordingly for sure. Certainly we're making do without it now. At the current level of service we're providing is what you would expect to get going forward. As long as we don't have that, I think we could up things a little bit if we had it. But just keep in mind, anything you push off and order in July, you should probably expect that it's not really going to be in service until 2022, just because of the time it takes to order and get things delivered. But.
Right, that was what I was worried about too. What are we doing now to clean the inside of the parking garage? You told us a few meetings ago, but refresh my memory.
We've got one of those tractors that goes around and has a snowblower attachment in the winter. We have a broom attachment for that. We'll take that around along with hand brooms and shovels and get along the curbs periodically.
Okay.
Greg, well, while we've got you here, we're talking about equipment, and I think some clarification might be helpful. Some of our larger equipment purchases also wind up on our 5-year capital plan, correct?
Correct. We have a part of that capital plan has all of these equipment purchases.
Right. So there's overlap. I mean, they're in the budget, but they're also in the plan. Now, also in that capital plan are projects, infrastructure projects. So we don't have that capital plan yet, and I don't know when we're supposed to get it. But it's hard to look at these equipment purchases in isolation from the capital plan, because ultimately there are decisions to be made on not only the equipment, but on what projects we're going to go forward with. And looking at just the equipment without looking at the full plan, which includes the projects, doesn't really give the council the opportunity to weigh priorities as to what's most important. So I have trouble seeing how we can look at equipment without seeing it in the rest of the capital plan. Maybe I'm seeing it wrong. Let me know.
I would agree that I think we need to look at the capital plan. I know that's a topic that Ginny wanted to discuss when we should discuss that at a future budget meeting to be announced or a finance meeting. I guess
Has it been prepared? Is it ready for distribution, the capital plan?
Just about, yeah. I wanted to go through it with the finance department and probably make a few tweaks, and then we'll be ready.
Okay, thanks. I just think it's an integral part of the picture, and in the situation we are in now, the council has to set priorities on what we're not going to spend money on and what we are, and they need to see all the priorities.
Absolutely.
And Mayor, once Greg finalizes the plan and we meet and go over funding and areas like that, we will share it with you and the council as soon as that is ready. But the difference between the capital plan and what you want to fund for 2000, or, you know, for the preceding or the upcoming year, the difference is that the capital plan is more of a long-term plan of goals that can be shifted versus what we want to prioritize for the upcoming year. And so that is why we provided you this equipment list now, because this was the department's priorities from the 5-year capital plan, and also if something wasn't on the capital plan that has arisen since.
Oh, gotcha, Jenny. That's a good point. But even if the council had year one, which is 2021
Right.
of the capital plan, that would certainly be pertinent.
Okay, yeah, we will get that to you as soon as we finalize it. And we can send it out for study, and then we can discuss it at the next finance committee meeting if you would like.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the equipment for the general fund? Okay, we can always come back to if anyone has a question later. So another we wanted to talk about as far as what's included in the budget is some of the staffing items. So in terms of new positions, which is just the firefighters at the top there, those are the only really new bodies that were requested in this budget. As far as the request, you may recall in the budget discussion last year, I think our crew at that time, as far as firefighters, was 20. And included in the budget was 20 plus 1 full-time firefighter, and then a budget for part-time firefighters. And that was, at the time, that was the plan to kind of tackle the overtime in the fire department. So in these first rounds of requests, included was 3 additionals to bring it to a total of 24. So what that does is that would add essentially 1 more person to each crew, the 4 crews that rotate. So the 1 additional one from last year, which is currently vacant, and then 3 new positions in 2021 requests. And then wanted to also highlight some vacancies. So these vacancies we do have some other vacancies, but as have been discussed in the finance committee and I think some of the council meetings, some of those vacancies are going to probably be filled this year. So this wouldn't include those. And this also excludes the fire, police, and DPW vacancies, because I think the fire has been short on people. They've had vacancies now for a couple of years at least. So the idea is that they're still trying to get back to their standard force. And the fire department as well, it was either keeping it same or these 3 new requests this year. So these were just some of the vacancies that may continue into next year as far as what is included. So these positions are being included in the budget. That's the numbers that you're being provided tonight. But we just wanted to point those out.
Joe, I have a question.
Yeah.
We are considering that the police department is down 4 vacancies right now. I don't see this in your PowerPoint presentation. I just want to make sure that we're making sure we're going to fund those 4 positions.
Yeah. So again, the vacancies for the general fund here is really just it excludes fire, it excludes police vacancies, because the idea is those public safety positions would be at full force. So if they're vacant, we would assume that they would be filled. And so yes, they're included. So in this budget for fire, as far as firefighters, there's 24 positions being requested, which is 3 more than what was last year. And then for police, it's the regular force level. So the current vacancies being filled. The vacancy schedule also excludes the DPW because they're the same, I think the same level. And the idea is I think some of those are going to be filled hopefully by the end of the year as far as based on need. So.
Joe, with these 3 new firefighters, this would help significantly with the overtime issues that we run into, would it? Right?
Well, so if you recall last year, I don't know if I think you may have been there for from the budget discussions, prior to when your term started. But at the time, I think the discussions was, there was a few different proposals that Jenny provided. One of them included going to 24 position, firefighters. But what was actually adopted in the 2020 budget was, again, 21 positions plus, it wasn't a number of part-timers, it was more about a number of hours. But the idea being that the part-time hours would help cover the leave time, which is generating a good percentage of it. So that's what I think it is. Ginny, you may have more to add because I know you dealt a lot with that last year.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Yes, by adding 3 new firefighters, it essentially in maybe the first year would decrease the overtime. But for example, this current budget request, the 9,000 hours of overtime was requested for the fire department. And that is if they kept the staffing level at 21. With 24 firefighters, they decreased that to 6,000 hours. So even after adding 3 new firefighters, which would have millions of dollars of legacy cost after they retired, because when you hire a firefighter, you're not only supporting that position during their career, but then there's also the health insurance costs after that. I gave a cost analysis last year on those legacy costs, and it is millions of dollars. Now, providing about 4,400 hours of part-time, if it's possible to build the part-time crew, could reduce the overtime hours by that equivalent amount. So it is the most financially beneficial approach to take for the taxpayer is to build the part-time staff rather than to increase the full-time firefighters. And considering that the ambulance calls are drastically down, and we're going to be reducing from 2,200 down to 1,600 ambulance calls, I just could not support adding 3 new firefighters to the crew. But from a financial viewpoint, I still support the scenario that we gave last year, because by supplementing the crew with part-timers, I know that they're probably going to hire another one and we might be up to 3. But if we slowly build that part-time crew, not only does it provide for part-time hour coverage to cover the leave time, but it also prepares the staff for when there are retirements, they already have a trained part-timer on that could then move into the full-time slot if that's what they desire. And also with the overtime issue, if there's no changes in operations, the overtime issue is just not sustainable. It's just too costly, because when you take the overtime dollars, which in 2019 was over 400,000, and you add the payroll cost and the retirement cost, which now is 30% because the rates went up, that's an awful lot of money to cover for leave time. Over 60%, so far this year, the overtime has been 67% to cover leave time. So just think we could bring that cost down by covering those leave hours with part-timers. I know it's a challenge, and I respect the fire chief's point of view, but from a financial point of view, we just don't have the money. And that is my opinion. But of course, it's up to you and the council to decide.
Excuse me, Ginny.
Thank you both.
So I apologize here, but the 3 firefighters, are we talking, these are part-timers?
No, these are new full-timers.
New full-timers, which
Yes.
will bring our crews up to how many in a crew?
24. It would bring the crews up to 24. So you would have 24 firefighters plus 4 captains. So you would have 4 7-crew men. So you would have 28 altogether.
Which, for those of you that haven't been on the council, and I think this was actually discussed before I was on the council, there was a plan to go to 7-man crews to impact the overtime, and we never went to it. And is that correct, Len?
Absolutely. This is something that a few of us were talking last year, suggesting that we could reduce the overtime by getting into 7-man crews. So thank you.
Yeah, it's been discussed for a number of years and we just could never make that jump to it. So,
Right. Well, I just want you to understand, you're reducing the overtime, but you're increasing the regular pay and fringe benefits. So you're not saving money, you're just shifting it. So you're just taking it out of the overtime code and putting it into the full-time regular code and the fringe benefit codes. You're not saving any money. You're just shifting the money.
And if I could just clarify that, Jenny, that's because you have to plan for the family plan, which as you can see is $24,800 a year.
Correct. And also, the new hire, in my viewpoint, will eventually have as much leave time as the veteran as they stay on. Then that leave time will have to get covered.
Joe and Jeannie, I also had a question about the code enforcement. This was brought to the finance committee and we basically tabled the idea of hiring someone new. So is this an additional code enforcement officers? Is that part of this?
So yeah, again, these are all just based on the requests. And, you know, I think this is something that, you know, the department heads would have, you know, input on, but this was something that was included in the 2020 budget, which was one more code enforcement officer than what they currently have. It was never filled in 2020. And so it's in the request again for 2021.
It was pitched to the finance committee that they wanted to hire code enforcement officer in lieu of there was somebody potentially going to retire in 21.
Yes,
Yeah,
no,
so sorry.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just going to say, but again, it's just the request. So, you know, certainly the council can take, you know, action on those kinds of things.
Okay, and just for clarity, those numbers are included in what we're looking at tonight.
Yes, all of these on this page are included in the budget. None of these have been removed or, you know, adjusted.
And you're supplying us with a slide later on.
Yep, I'll give you all the slides.
Can I ask
Ginny,
a
I'm
quick
sorry,
question?
did you want to say something? I didn't know if Ginny wanted to say something before about this.
No, you clarified it. I just wanted to
Okay.
tell Len that, yes, that is what you had agreed to at the finance committee as far as holding off on this position. But we just wanted you to know that we have not been authorized or instructed to eliminate it from the budget. And that's what this process does.
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
I'm sorry, Katie. Katie, you had something?
I did. I just wanted to ask, I guess about salaries, which may be an executive session thing. So if that's true,
Well, I guess it
I just
depends on what
wondered.
you need to ask. Are you
Okay,
looking for?
so the salary for 3 full-time firefighters is
Yes.
total $114,000
Correct.
or
It's
115. So
and that's established in the fire contract,
right.
that amount.
Okay. And how much, I guess my question is for Katie, how much flexibility do we have over that?
Absolutely none, given that they are negotiated salaries as established by a salary schedule that's adopted as an addendum to the fire union contract.
And
So-
if I,
Okay.
oh,
I guess, I just
sorry,
was gonna say, I
wanted to
guess
add
to,
too, these are the kind of entry level, what the 3 firefighters shown here. Certainly
Oh,
if
okay.
someone came in with experience, it could be higher. Is that right, Katie?
Yeah, that's generally correct. I mean, I'm assuming, I mean, granted, I'm not sure exactly what went into those numbers, but I'm assuming you're budgeting for Appendix D2 level 1 entry level full-time firefighters. Yes. And so the cost individually is what, like 34,000 something, 37,000 per person.
Yeah.
So Katie, my point was just that those numbers are all negotiated. I could send you the addendum to the contract if you'd like to see how they're laid out.
Katie, sorry, I want to
Okay,
say it's
I
actually
just-
closer to 38.
Oh, 38, okay.
yeah, I guess my question was about just looking at those salaries compared to the ones below. I just wondered, thinking about attracting firefighters to our department, how competitive we can be. But if it's set like across New York State and there's like a rubric, then
Well, it's set with our contract with the local firefighter union. So the
Okay.
starting salaries are set. The PBA also has set starting salaries in their schedules, and the CSEA has a grid based on grade levels. So different positions are assigned to the various grade levels. I think that I forget how many total there are. I don't know if you know offhand. It's over 12. I know that, but different grade levels, and so they're all structured within the union contract.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my question is like, I think that Jenny has a good point about the part-time firefighting. I know that in the corporate world that's something that's done a lot because then you end up saving money on the legacy costs. And I'm just thinking, I don't know specifically what the struggle is with filling those positions, but I guess my question is, I was just wondering how competitive we could be. How do we get firefighters to want to, fight for our department part-time? But we can talk about that later. It was just startling to me, I think, to see a full-time firefighter salary up against some administrative salaries.
Katie, as Katie said to you, she could send you the addendum of the contract, and you will see how they move through the grid. The 38,000 is
Okay.
just the beginning step, and then within 4 or 5 years, they've moved up quite a bit.
And they're also in
Okay.
it.
Yeah, if you could send that to me, just so I can learn. That would be... Sorry, Joe.
No, I'm sorry. Delays.
I'm finished.
The retirement, I mean, there's also the entire compensation package, and not just the salary. I think there's some the fire retirement system, the retirement system that covers police and fire is a strong system too. Something else to consider.
So,
And I think
Jill,
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just have a lot to learn about that, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're happy to talk to you if you ever want to come in or call, or I guess call. Sorry, Scott, were you?
yeah, what's the grant administrator position down there on vacancies?
Sure. So that's a position that was also requested and included in the 2020 budget, but has not been filled. So that falls under the community development department, which is Judy Pangman. And I think, it's a position that was filled at one point, I believe, right, Jenny?
Yes, at one point for 1 year, it was filled with I'm trying to remember what her title was, but it's just not coming to my mind. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the budget here provides some flexibility because there's not. I think there's, we could see what's available and possible as far as possible candidates if this were to be, included. But I think a lot of it has to do with the level of workload, on a one-person department currently, and then the availability to go after, additional grant opportunities. There's been a lot of work, I know, with the DRI and those kinds of things. So I think that, as far as why it's included again, there's still probably a need or a potential need based on, the direction the city goes in the future. But
Well,
again,
Scott,
it's a request, and it can be, I'm sorry, Mayor.
No, I was just going to say, Scott, it's a good question. And I had asked, because in considering this position, I had asked Judy to give me a list of all of the economic development activities she's responsible for, and she gave it to me, and I was holding it for the planning committee meeting, but I'll send it out to everybody now. Because when we talk about economic development, just a little history. When I started, there was a community development director, which was basically our economic developer. And there was a grants administrator, which was Jeff House. And both of them left, and we hired Judy to replace both of them. And she actually accomplished twice as much work as the two of them combined. But the problem is she's really struggling because she's doing the big picture economic development, while at the same time she's doing the detailed, paperwork and administrative work, which is really holding us back. So that's why we really need to figure out a way to have, if Judy is going to be our economic developer, she needs support. So we need to, one way or another, we're going to have to beef that up. She's doing twice the work of what two people did before, and it's problematic.
So Gary, can we outsource that to give Judy some help instead of having the insurance cost and the rest of the FICA?
It's everything's possible, right? I mean, it's all in the details. Let me, I'll send to the complete council what she prepared for me that shows what she does now. That's a good starting point.
I will, sorry.
I just wanted to answer Len's question a little bit more detail. Len, there's IRS rules as far as you're an employee or an independent contractor. So we would have to look very carefully on what you outsourced. But if there's any supervision, then it's an employee.
Great.
Yeah, and I think she does in her budget currently have, at least for 2020, I believe it's requested again for 21, is some money for some additional grant writing. So there is a little bit that's being outsourced. It's, for some specific projects, I believe that she has.
Personally, I think that we should be outsourcing more of our grant writing. We have some excellent grant writers that we contract with, and they're well worth the money. And I think that we could make better use of Judy's time doing big picture stuff and sitting down tediously writing grants. We have some really good contractors that can do that work for us.
Right. I'm sorry, Gary. Maybe I wasn't clear. That's what I was asking, whether we could outsource that. Instead of hiring a grant administrator, we could outsource.
Well, let me send you the list that she prepared. It's a good starting point. It's there's a lot involved. It's complicated, but I think that list will help.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that Judy would have some input because I know, depending on where some different things are heading, she would probably have some thoughts and ideas as far as what would be beneficial too.
I guess while we're talking about positions, I guess this question's to Katie. Katie, you and Greg had prepared a list that you've been kind of leading us up through 2020. And I believe there was like 10, 11 vacancies. That's all been in consideration of how we're moving forward for 21.
I believe so. So kind of like Joe had mentioned a while back, Len, what you're looking at right now are kind of the positions that were budgeted for 2020 that were not filled, the new request for 2021, and this excludes police, fire, and DPW. And the bulk of the positions that were on that positions allocated spreadsheet that we had gone through with the finance committee it included what you see on your screen right now, with exception of the 3 new firefighters. But most of those positions were police, fire, and DPW. So I guess the short answer is yes, all of those look like they've been included.
Great, thank you.
So just to back up again, the police vacancies that we have now, the 3 or 4 of them that we have, are included in this budget, correct?
Joe, you're muted.
Sorry, I was taking a drink before. Correct. The budget includes the full force that the chief has been trying to get to, but for different reasons. I mean, you're on the committee. I think you've heard some of the challenges with people getting through the academies and whatnot. So there was always some percentage that as far as what may be approved to what actually gets through. But they're all included. It's full force. No new, but the same level for the police.
And Chief Brenner didn't ask for any new positions?
No, I think I don't want to speak for him, but I believe in the past that he said, he'd be happy if he can get back to where he needs to, wants to be first, but he's obviously having trouble getting that. So to add new positions would be, even more of a challenge. So, but again, that's That's me paraphrasing what I believe he said at other meetings in the past.
Yes, and just so you know, Scott, the police force used to have 20 police officers, and now they're staffed at 18 for, they consider full staff at 18. But years ago, it used to be 20.
I believe back in 1970, it was 32 officers. Actually.
Oh,
So,
wow.
Any other questions on this? Okay, again, as I said, we can always come back if anyone has something later. So I'm going to turn it back over to Ginny.
Okay, this screen, this was what I sent to everyone today in analyzing our reserve balances. And this is as of basically today. And you will see the categories listed for public safety, highway equipment, streets and sidewalks, and further down the list. And I just wanted to let you know, in 2020, we used almost $800,000 from our reserves. And it was between public safety, highways, streets and sidewalks, and the building reserves, and also the park and rec. It was kind of spread all over. And that would have been fine if 2020 had been a normal year. But obviously 2020 has not been a normal year. So for 2021, my recommendation to the committee would be not to use more than 10% of these reserves. The reserves are very beneficial for us for a number of reasons. It gives us money for the future. It gives us money for the emergencies that pop up, but it also affects our bond rating. When I went through the bond issuance twice during this year, they looked at our fund balances and the strength of them and our reserves in quite good detail. And that was one of our plus factors of getting the bond rating that we got. So my recommendation, again, would not to use more than 10% of it. Joe, if you would, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Jenny. So if we only use 10% of the fund balance, which you're estimating the unrestricted fund balance as of the end of the year is going to be 6.5 million, you're suggesting then we're only going to borrow from our fund balance 655,000.
Well, no, I'm talking about the reserve fund balances right now.
Okay.
That's what I was referring to. The next screen takes us into our unrestricted. So you will see that our unrestricted fund balance at the end of 19 was 7.5 million. So looking at the city of Oleana, between its unrestricted and restricted fund balance, we had over 12 million in fund balance at the end of 2019. This is really quite remarkable for a city our size, and also compared to other municipalities throughout New York State. And the mayor has said this many times before, because of good leadership and decision-making done in the past, it has left us with strong fund balances. These strong fund balances have got us through crisis. It's got us through the 2006 flood, the 2011 flood, the COVID crisis. Whenever it has carried capital projects. So we didn't have to bond as early, and we didn't have to pay for BANs or long-term interest. So having strong fund balances helps us in many ways. But because 2020 and the COVID effect, you will see that I've estimated decreases for each fund, the general, water, and sewer. And the estimated fund balance, is shown on the screen of 6.5. The water fund is down to about 150,000, and the sewer is about 663. Our current fund balance policy says that we should retain about 35% of our expenditures. And I would like to have council consider in the future, depending on how 2021 goes, to increasing that to 45% for the reasons that I just stated. The fund balance gets us through very important times that we don't expect. And so say our annual budget was 17 million, at 45% level would put us about 7.6. And you'll see at the end of 2019, it was 7.5. That's what my target was at the end of 19, and that's almost where we hit, was to have about a 45% level. And but if we get our budget up to 19 million, as what it's being drafted right now, that would bring it up to about 8.5. So we're not able to do that right now with a $19 million budget. So my suggestion is that we present conservative budgets. We don't overestimate our revenues and we don't underestimate our expenditures. This will provide the city opportunity to build our reserves depending on the actual activity that comes in. So we have to decide how much of the fund balance we're going to use right now to carry us through the COVID situation. My recommendation for 2021 is not to go over 1.2 million of the unrestricted fund balance, with the hopes that our sales tax will grow, our ambulance revenue will return, and maybe our state aid will return. But I would not recommend going over 1.2 million to allocate towards the 2021 budget.
So I guess I want to turn to Gary and Dave and John at this point and just ask, historically, what have you guys done at this point?
You mean process-wise decision-making? Is that what your question, Lynn?
Yeah.
I think that's a very good question.
Gary, you're muted.
Here's my suggestion. And this is only, the way I see it. Others may see it differently, and certainly Ginny may see it differently. We've just seen a hell of a lot of information here. And what is before us is that we've got a gap of several $1 million between projected revenue and requested expenses. And it's the council's job now to try to close that gap. And whether it's through increasing revenue or cutting expenses, it's probably a combination of both. In order to make the council's job a little easier to wrap your heads around, I would want to see something provided to the council, which would be a list of the expenses that are included in the current budget that in the recommendation of Ginny and Joe and Katie and Greg can put their heads together and give the council a list of the expenses included in the budget which they would consider possibly expendable. I don't know if that's the right word, but those that could be considered absolutely not essential, and give that to the council in a list form and say, look, these are the expenses which you could choose to cut and the city's not going to fall apart by doing so. And which would greatly simplify, I think, the task ahead. That just would be my recommendation as the simplest way to proceed.
And Mayor, just so you know, and Council, just so you know, Joe and I basically did that last night, and we eliminated the $5 million gap, but we did not want to make those decisions for you. So, because we need guidance, for example, how much do you want to raise the tax levy by? How much of fund balance are you willing to use? And, but just so you know, Joe and I have done it both, well, for all three funds, and we have eliminated, not eliminated, but we have funded the surplus. We did it by putting things on hold, by cutting the service and supplies by 20%. But we have more options that we can consider as the meeting goes on. But Mayor, we can do that, and we can provide it to you. And but we also wanted to respect your decision making and not make those decisions for you. But we can provide you different options.
Excuse me, Jenny. When you say that you eliminated the gap, am I correct that you did not include a tax increase when you were eliminating the gap?
No, I did include a tax increase.
How much of an increase did you include?
I included the 200,000.
Okay.
So Ginny, you bring up a good point here, and I think you may be able to do it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't see any problem with you giving the council, your draft recommended budget as the finance director.
Okay,
At the same time, providing them with the full requested budget as shown tonight, along with a menu of items that the council could pick to cut from that are deemed non-essential. And this way, they can look at your recommendation as the finance director. They can look at the list themselves. They can compare them. It gives them a guide. I think I'm just trying to take an overwhelming task and make it simple to wrap your head around.
we almost put the slide in, just so you know, we almost put the slide in of our ideas, but we did not want to, as I said, make the decisions for you.
Would it be too much to ask that that list of things that were non-essential also be slightly prioritized so we can kind of take a look at what the thinking is with regards to those issues or those
Yes.
those items?
We'll go back to the department heads and we'll ask them what is their absolute top priority. And they already know they've been expected to make cuts. We told them that right up in the beginning. We said, please put your full request in so the council is fully informed on what type of dollars we're looking at, but know that we're going to be coming back to ask you if you make cuts.
And if I could suggest also that those essential items which are kind of pre-July 1 and those essential items that could wait till post-July 1, just having that kind of ordering of things might help to clarify our thinking as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Jenny.
So Ginny, you said that this was 19 million total,
This particular budget, yes.
and then last year this year's operating budget is 17 and some
Yes,
change.
yeah, and that is just, it's really just because of the equipment requests. Last year, the equipment was under $1 million. This year, it's over 3 million. That's where the biggest change is.
So like if this council came back to you and said, pretty much we just want to stay at the 17 and some change mark like last year, how can we make it happen? Is that the kind of guidance you're looking for?
Yes, but as I said, and I'll repeat it again, I'm sorry, is that I do need to know what you're willing to do for the tax levy. Do you want me to stay at a 2% increase? Do you want it at 1.5? Do you want me to go the full tax cap? So I need some guidance there. But I can also, meet with each department head and say, look, we have to cut and we have to bring this number down. Give us your absolute essential items that you need. Tell me what you can postpone. Tell me what you can really postpone until 2022. We can meet with each department head and thoroughly go through that. I believe that Greg has already started it. I'm sure that probably the fire chief and the police chief have also started it. We are also going to need guidance on the payroll. Are you going to support hiring 3 new firefighters? Or do you want to stay with the part-time plan? It's those type of decisions that we need some guidance on.
Well, Jenny, if I can make a suggestion here. You talk about you want guidance on the tax cap. Sometimes it can go in both directions.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes after you see what you absolutely need and can't give up, that influences how much you're willing to raise the taxes.
Okay.
So let me recommend a starting point.
Thank you.
That take, just pick a number, 2%.
Okay.
Put the 2% in there for the budget, recognizing that that is by no means carved in stone. As we go through, if the council sees that justification for going higher, they can do so. If they see that they're able to keep it lower, they can do so. But at least it's a starting point. It's not going to be carved in stone until everything is over with.
Okay.
I think Glenn has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. So I guess for me, the starting point is your revenue. We're going to look at this like a business. So we're estimating $14 million is going to be our revenue. And so I think if I heard you correctly, Ginny, you're recommending no more than 10% of the restricted reserve fund, correct? So that's approximately $466,000. And you're recommending using 1.2 million of the unrestricted fund balance. So that would be 20%. So that's your recommendation out of those extra, we'll call them extra reserves, right? So if we add 14.1 in with 1.2, let's just round it to 2. So we've got basically $16 million. So can you balance the budget on 16?
I do not know until I look at it. But I will let you know. I can look and I can see. I'm thinking that if we meet with each department head and, for example, as I said, a 20% cut in the services and supplies, that saves $700 and some thousand. We have some other items to possibly talk about in executive session for consideration. So we have other options to look at.
Right. And so we lean on you, or at least I know I'm leaning on you and Joe and the department heads. You're the city staff, that you are intimate. And for me to sit here and go through your equipment list, I'm not the expert. You guys are. And so for me, I'm just one vote. I expect the city staff to run this like their own household. We're not going to go out and borrow $5.4 million.
Right.
Right, and I think we said at the beginning, this is the, based on the request, and this is definitely not the budget that we would be asking you to vote on.
Correct, Joe. And I just don't want council members to get lost and get down into the weeds, and we don't need to get down in the weeds. I think Gary's mentioned it, Dave's mentioned it, and even Mark's mentioned it. Let's just stay up here and expect, the department heads who are the specialists to get us through this.
Okay, thank you. That's the only guidance I needed, and we will move forward with that.
The only thing I would like to add to what Len said is I would hesitate. I never like increasing taxes, but I know that if we don't have some small increase, there's certain expenses we have that no matter what we do, they're going to go up year to year to year. And if we don't have some degree of an increase, and I'm not saying necessarily hitting the tax cap, but if we don't have some degree of an increase every year, we're going to fall behind and further and further and further behind when it comes to making equipment purchases and maintenance purchases and so on, because those personnel expenses, they just go up every year, no matter what we do.
Right, but the last thing we want to do is go to the general public and say, look, we're going to raise your tax rate by 4.1% so we can get an additional $200,000.
Of course, but that's also what I said is I'm not talking about hitting the tax cap, but if we don't have some degree, and I'd like to have some options of choices for that, because especially this year, I don't know that we can get away with a 0% increase. I would love to have a 0% increase, and we've done it in the past, but what you usually face the next year is a bigger jump in expenses due to personnel costs and retirement costs and insurance costs.
Right. And also you have to keep in mind that you do not want to have to use 1.2 million of your fund balance to balance your budget. Right. Your savings will be wiped out within, very quickly. So the only reason I'm recommending the 1.2 is just because of the COVID situation. And
correct, because this is really a 4-year endeavor. You've heard me say this multiple times throughout the whole year. I believe that this is a 4-year endeavor that we're going down, and it should trend down in the next 3 years. But we only have 6.5 for our unrestricted, and there's no way that we can continue this. And our tax base is reverse of when the folks that were in this office before us had the ability to put the money aside. That was when the days where we had 60% tax base and 40% not, and now we're almost reverse. So I would just like to see you guys balance it. I mean, I was going to come out of the gate with balance it at 14 million and figure it out. To sit here and keep robbing out of our savings account or bonding to a bond rate is just not fiscally sound.
Okay, we'll go with this guidance, and we'll revise the numbers. We'll meet with the department heads. We will do as the mayor requested, and we will give you our best recommendation of what to consider.
Yeah, and to a large extent, I agree with Len in that taxes, we don't want to, I don't want to increase taxes, or I want to increase as little as I can, because as much as we're struggling, every family and every business in the city is struggling even more than we are. And, you know, we hurt them, we hurt ourselves. So, you know, and, you know, spending deep into our reserves, you know, reserves are emergencies, but if when we need to use them, we need to use them. If we can cut some of our expenses and not use them, that's what we should do. And I think the one area where I personally don't want to cut is on our infrastructure projects, because that's our future. You know, we can cut back on current expenditures, but as soon as we start cutting our big projects that are designed to build our future, then that's worse than spending your reserves, because you're spending your future.
Absolutely, Gary. You know, when this all started, my personal goal was not to lay one city employee off. And so far we've met that goal. We've got great city staff looking out, got good committee members, good council members. My next goal was not to put city houses or properties on the tax sale 3 years from now because they couldn't get past this COVID thing. We just don't know when this is going to stop. And so that's my goal.
Yeah, I think that's been, Len, I think that's kind of been the whole goal of the finance committee this year. But every time we tasked Katie and Greg to go back and Jenny and say, where else can we save money? And I think we hit it pretty good this year so far, with our department head stepping up at over $800,000 worth of savings. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. Almost $1 million in the middle of a year, you know, where to be able to come up with that was a big help to everybody. And I agree with Gary is, you know, everybody's struggling right now, from businesses to households to, and I'm just, here's an opportunity to steal something from Mark Drenick that says, here's how we can use this as a PR thing, is how we helped out in the COVID crisis, how we managed to get through and not only helped our businesses and our people, but also that we managed to tighten our belt as much as we could to keep people employed, and how we care about our employees, our citizens and stuff. And that's what's going to help our city in the future as well. So, I mean, this budget here is probably one of the most crucial budgets that we'll probably ever have to come up with.
Scott, I'm going to quote you. The other day, I believe you made a comment when we were looking at filling some personnel positions, as you were concerned about us being too top heavy. And, you know, I think that as we look now going into positions to fill or positions that may need to be eliminated, you know, maybe that is a guiding principle to try to keep in mind, that not to preserve the most top-heavy positions, or to. So just a thought. I was paying attention to what you said, Scott.
So Jenny, can I ask a clarifying question? We're talking about the kind of general fund here, but we still need to consider the water and sewer fund. Is that correct? And the rates for those? Is that kind of all part of the same conversation here? Sorry, Jenny.
Well, we're going to be moving on to the water fund once you guys are ready.
Okay. I guess I'd like to understand that a little bit more. I think that will be really telling. I think given what the presentation that we saw from you on, I don't even know what day it was at this point, Tuesday. I think I would push for trying to back the water and sewer fund a bit more, and thinking about trying to keep our costs and not raise things with you know, with our general fund here. So Mayor, you introduced 2%. That might be a good starting point, but I'd also like to see a 0% as Len's suggesting. Let's see if we can, you know, hit it with what we have right now, because we might need to be really putting some of the increases behind the water and sewer fund, I think.
I respect your opinion, Mark, but from a financial point, I will tell you that I would not ever support a 0% raise or 0% tax levy increase. It compounds over the years. Even if you were to do 0.5% or 1%, slow, steady increases are able to be absorbed, but also compounded as the years go by. Because once you leave that money on the table, you're never going to make up for it. And you may find yourself, as David said, all of a sudden in a crisis where you're going to need a 4 or 5 or 6% tax increase because you haven't made those slow, steady increases over the previous years. It's just something to consider. And I will just let you know that I would not recommend that.
Fair enough. I'd certainly be interested in seeing at least a 2% and taking a critical look at that as well.
Okay. Are we ready to move on to the water fund? Okay, so hopefully most of you saw the Waterworth presentation on Tuesday night at Finance. If you haven't, it's really well worth seeing, or even worth watching again. It showed the water system and all of the costs related to it and all of the funding. You will see in this particular slide the estimates that we did for the water fund. And what I did here is I anticipated a 5% rate increase, which would basically increase the base charge. Right now, they're only paying $208 a year for 37,000 gallons of water. So a 5% increase on that would raise it $10. 20% or a 10% increase would obviously raise it about $21. But what I did here in the estimates, even though I'm asking for a 5% increase, hoping that you would actually consider a 10%, because you will see that the water fund is going to have quite a deficit, that I looked at it based on things coming back to full activity around July 1st. Thinking that the colleges are not going to be here in the spring, and thinking that it's still going to take the businesses a while to be fully opened again with full activity. So that is why you see decreases in the college sales, and you're not seeing a very big increase in our normal water sales just because of lack of activity. If restaurants aren't full, if hotel rooms aren't full, if we don't have the normal activity that we have with the visitors coming into town, with all the different tournaments that we have, even just at the bowling alley tournaments or the golf tournaments and things like that. If the hotels aren't full, the water activity is not happening. Baseball Hall of Fame, all of those type activities, if they're not happening, it affects the water and sewer funds. So what you will see here, obviously, is conservative estimates in the revenues, and a decrease in the interest, just like we did in the general fund, just because of the federal rate. And also, I also put in a decrease on the other type of incomes in the water department, only because of lack of activity. For example, if hotel rooms don't have to have as many water tests done, if restaurants don't have to have as many water tests done because of lack of activity. And again, we did not put in any fund balance reserves here. And so you're going to see that the subtotal is about 185,000 of decrease in water sales. But also we did not allocate any of the fund balance, and last year they used about 634,000 to balance the budget. And those were for one-time shot items. It was equipment purchases and or major repairs that were being done. And I want to say about 225 of that from the fund balance was to go over to fund a capital project. As the mayor said, it was for infrastructure improvements. So if you have any questions there, I can have Joe go into the expenses. Just the other comment that I want to make on the water fund revenues is The Waterworks presentation showed a slow and steady increase in rates that will help build up our reserves. So eventually, we will not have to borrow any money to fund any of the infrastructure repairs at the water department.
Okay, so the expenditures, again, the layout is similar to the general fund, the same kind of categories. And the, you know, what's included in those is the same as well. So I won't, if anyone has any specific questions on this, I can go over them. Otherwise, I'll just jump into the equipment schedule. Okay. So these are the different requests. And again, you were provided with more detail level as far as what is included in each one of these areas. I don't know if you wanted to talk anything specific about these as well. This includes 1/3 of the van camera, or the camera van, excuse me, that we discussed at the general fund, as well as 1/3 of the dump truck and the excavator and some hydraulic shoring, which I don't think came up, but those are all items that are split between the three funds. Yep. Any questions on any of these or any of the detail? Okay. I'll turn it back over to Ginny on the deficit. Oh, Ginny, you're muted.
This slide shows you that currently the deficit for the 2021 budget for the water fund is 1.1 million. And looking at this deficit, this just shows that the water fund sales does not support the cost of the water fund department. It just doesn't. Our rates have been historically low as compared to other municipalities. The infrastructure repairs that the water department needs is about 8 million over the next 10 years. And this slide just proves the fact that we're just not collecting enough revenue from our water sales. The mayor said the other night, as far as community growth, which was a very good point, if we get the lofts on Beach Street, if we get the apartment buildings down on River Street, if we are able to grow businesses in the railroad yards, if we're able to increase dorms at the colleges, any type of community growth is going to definitely help the water and sewer funds. I don't know, for those of you that remember, there used to be a diaper factory on River Street. The diaper factory used a lot of water usage. And when that company left Oneonta, a lot of our revenue went with it. So those type of things, if we can recruit businesses, even at small manufacturing, this would greatly help this fund. So again, in the waterworks presentation, I'm sorry.
Oh, I just have 2 questions. I can hold them for when is a good time.
Okay. In the waterworks presentation, we talked about advancing $1 million to the water fund just as a cash loan, and the water fund would pay the general fund back some interest. I'm looking into that because we will have some cash flow problems in the water fund until we make up for our COVID losses. For example, I'm predicting right now for 2020 that we're going to actually lose about 450,000 in water sales just because of the lack of activity. And so we're going to need to carry the water fund for a little while as far as cash goes. And I'm vetting that with the state controller's office to make sure we have everything in place. So again, we will take the guidelines that we just talked about with the general fund, and Joe and I and the department heads will do the same thing for this, the water fund, and bring you back suggestions of how to balance this budget.
Could I ask? Yeah. Okay. So, 2 things. One is a follow-up on the attracting businesses that use a lot of water. I know when we started our terms, we all met with the IDA, and they had mentioned a slaughterhouse in the town. They use a ton of water. It's in the that industrial park. Somebody can help me out with the exact location, but it's
Tony
basically right across the highway from the water treatment plant. Do they use city water? And if so, does anyone know if that project is going forward?
Greg, that's more of a question for you because I'm not familiar with what Katie is speaking to.
I'm not familiar, or I don't know any more about the project other than hearing about it in the news, I think. But the Pony Farm Industrial Park by exit 13,
Yes.
there is what you're talking about. And that is with the city's water system in the town going on, portions of it.
Okay.
And the water plant up on East Street, the wastewater plant is one you're referring to across the highway there. But it is
Right. Yes.
Katie, the
Okay.
wastewater treatment plant is across from that location that you're referring to. The water treatment plant's up by the high
That's
school.
what Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't say wastewater, did I? Sorry. Okay, so that was my first question. Second question is, I've heard you both say several times that our water sales, what we charge for water is pretty low. And that may be true. I don't know that I've ever gotten a really satisfactory answer to this question that's been burning on my mind, which is that I think that it's not the amount that is billed that is necessarily too much. I think that it's that residents are getting one really big bill once a year for their water. And I know that it's been brought up before. And like I said, I just don't think that I've gotten an answer that really feels definite to me. But is there any way for us to raise our rates, but split them into smaller monthly remittances?
We can look at
Because
that.
I usually, when that would be great. I usually, when that question gets asked, we talk about the ability to take payments online, which isn't really what I'm talking about. Just if I could mail a check monthly, right, to City Hall. I know that a check for $40 once a month would be a lot easier than a huge bill once a year. And I'm sure that I can speak for a bunch of people.
We are looking into different changes that we can implement. But just so you know, we've got about 4,000 water accounts citywide and townwide. If we were to process monthly payments for all 4,000 accounts, that would take a lot of manual labor, and it would probably require at least a part-time person to help process all that payment processing. But Greg and I are looking into the future of sending the bills electronically instead of mailing them, being able to accept payments online. It's all part of the upgrade process that we're looking into. It's not going to happen quickly, but we are exploring. And maybe not monthly billings, but we are seriously considered quarterly billings, and which is a really good segue in into my next comment as far as revenues. If any of you attended the 2020 budget, you heard me make a presentation. This is going to get a little nerdy here for a minute. Being governmental, we have different guidelines as far as when we're able to report revenues, and we have to meet certain criteria to make it valid. I had planned on doing it for 2020, but because of COVID, I was not able to get the bills out in the right time period to be able to book the annual billing the way I wanted to increase the one-shot items that I could do for the water and sewer fund. So I'm hoping to be able to do that this year, which will give an additional about $360,000 to the water fund and about $264,000 to the sewer fund. But to make that happen, what I need to do is ask council to amend the code. When I talked to Dave Merzig about that, right now the code says that the city shall bill in March following the year end and have it due in April. I need to have that code updated to let me bill in February. And then I would like to give the residents a 90-day collection period. That way, it meets the criteria for me to be able to claim the excess billings for those who went over the minimum. And it would be a one-time shot increase into the fund balances for both the water and sewer fund. And but being able to increase the sewer fund balance by $360,000 would be significant. So I will be bringing that forward. Any questions?
Yeah, I guess, I'm sorry, I'm just having a hard time understanding. So we're talking now about still billing once a year for the water?
Once a year, and yeah, once a year until we're able to modify the system. That will take some time. I don't think we'll be able to get that modified for 2021, but just know you can tell your residents that we're able to accept monthly payments if they want to send them on their own. We can prepay their account for them. We can put the monies right on their account. So when they get their bill, it will be a reduced amount because their prepayments will be there. We have also set people up on payment plans. Yeah, we've also set people up on payment plans who have requested it. And, so just, you can tell them that they are able to prepay. We have that capability now.
Okay, so the challenge is really more with the issuing the bills more frequently.
Yes, it would be a major
rather than accepting.
Yeah, it'd be a major program change.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
That makes total sense. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we can segue into the sewer fund, and then I'm going to hand this back over to Joe. The sewer fund, you will see, is much stronger than the water fund. And again, I applied the same concept to the estimated rates. Sewer rents, I will be asking for a 5% increase. I don't think we need to go to 10% in the sewer rates because the fund balance is so much stronger. However, I do want to stress that the sewer rate stayed stable for 5 years, which now has an accumulative effect on the upcoming construction projects and infrastructures repairs on the sewer infrastructure throughout the city. And so I want to stress to you again, slow, steady rates increases, so we don't all of a sudden have to come to you and say, hey, look, we need a 25% rate increase because now we have all these repairs to be done. The Waterworth presentation that we made the other night, it will be the same type of thing that we're going to do for the sewer fund, and we'll be able to show you long-term infrastructure repairs, capital projects to be done, rate increases, and how it will affect the cash flow and how it will build up the reserves. Greg and I's goal for the water and sewer funds is to have the reserve set so that we don't have to bond. The taxpayer doesn't have to pay bond interest, bond costs, and things like that. It will take time, but we truly believe that if we follow the plan within the next 10 years, it will really benefit the community as a whole. And again, we will take the same instruction that we have for the general fund and apply it to the water sewer funds and bring you back a balanced budget. And if there's not any questions on the logic of how we estimated the sewer rents, Joe can take you into the expenses.
I just have a quick question, Ginny. Can you tell us the 5% increase, what that translates to per household?
Yes, one second. Right now, the sewer bill is $230 for the base, and a 5% increase would increase it $11, rounded $12. So it'd be about a $12 increase.
Thank you.
And that's annual, Ginny? A $12 annual?
That's annual. Yeah, and just to put things in perspective, the minimum bill for water and sewer services to every customer, but about 1,800 of our customers stay under the minimum. So for $438, divide that by 12, it's $36.50 a month that they're paying for water and sewer. So that represents how low our rates are for these services.
So on the expense side, again, I mean, this is the same kind of format and layout. I'll share the equipment schedule, which you also have more detail of. Again, these are based on requests and contractual increases and those kinds of things. Here is the equipment. I believe Greg mentioned earlier, or Ginny may have mentioned it on Greg's behalf, I'm not sure, on the sewer equipment. I think there's some requests for the digester, excuse me. They total at 150,000. I'm not sure if there's also something a septic receiving station. I'm not sure if that's tied into that or not, but the digester requests are at least 100 or 150,000 rounded. And that's going to be in the wastewater treatment plant line. I think those were a priority. The sanitary sewers line does include, like, again, a third of the camera van, the dump truck, the excavator, and the hydraulic shoring, as well as a couple other items. Any questions on the equipment? Okay, so here's the deficit. I'll turn it back over to Ginny.
Well, it's basically the same logic as that we have just gone over with the water. It shows about a $680,000 deficit. But again, we will take the same guidelines that you have given us tonight, and we will bring you back a balanced budget presentation or recommendation.
So Ginny, I just want to be clear on that. So we're looking at we're looking at, my notes go, I guess I'm going to wing it. Was it 5% off of restricted and 20% off of unrestricted funds?
No, you mean for the general fund? The percentages for the general fund?
Correct.
Yes, it was 10% of the reserves or the restricted funds. I would not go over that. And my recommendation for the general fund is 1.2. The only reason that I'm recommending that, as I said before, is because of the current pandemic that we're in. I would not want to make that routine. I would not want to do that year after year because the fund balance would just be wiped out very quickly. With the water and sewer funds, the recommendations coming back for using the reserves or the fund balance are going to be much smaller because the funds are much smaller.
Do you feel comfortable with these recommendations?
Yes, I do. When Joe and I were working on trying to fill the deficit or how to deal with the deficit last night, both of us were very comfortable. Joe, you can add your viewpoint, but I believe we were both very comfortable with the approach. And
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Gene.
No, go right ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so I think one thing to keep in mind in that regard, though, is that exercise is being done, without direction from council. So, that's certainly something I think, Ginny, right? We'll be revisiting, obviously. And it was trying to make it work within, again, what these requests were, realizing that this hasn't been, changed or managed in any way at this point. We just wanted to share the information with you. So yeah, I mean, the plan that we came up with, I think part of the reason we didn't share it, like Ginny said, is to get some input and guidance. Is it, a fairly new council, so just to see how this process works. So.
And just to let you know, history-wise, we've had council members say that we want to, give it to us all balanced and figured out. And we have other council members that have told us this is our decision, it's not your decision. So we're just trying to find a happy medium in presenting you with the information and taking your direction from there. And you've provided that direction tonight, and I greatly appreciate it.
So, I mean, we'll have more, I mean, we can talk more now, but as far as next steps, obviously direction from council is something I think we've established at this point. So we'll go back and be working with the department heads to review the request based on that direction. And we'll be reviewing all line items, you know, again, I mean, really, again, this has been kind of the data collection piece. So, you know, we'll be able to see what other things, you know, we might recommend from, you know, Ginny's experience or our perspective. And again, that date, that 10/27 date, I think was something that had come up very early on, maybe back in August. So it was always tentative. So that was on our slide. I think we talked about that a little at the beginning with the mayor. So that's something that will, you know, the actual date we'll revisit as far as the next date. So,
Do we need to set that date tonight, Joe?
I don't know if we need to. Ginny, do you have a preference or?
No, I was gonna, I asked everyone in the beginning, when we went over the date slide, to check their calendars, see what, you know, I don't know how you guys communicate between yourselves as far as setting meeting dates, but whatever works the best. I know the mayor's got a conflict for the 27th. But if, you know, if you're able to set, you know, if you're able to check the calendars now and we can figure it out, that's fine. I just didn't want to put that added pressure because I knew there was so much information.
Right. I think Gary was pointing out, though, that we have a common council meeting on the 27th.
Not October. I think that was the November one, right? Wasn't it?
The November 17th, you do have a council meeting, and that is when the tentative budget has to legally be laid. So that
October 27th is OPD meeting.
I'm on that as well.
Oh, but can we change that to the 28th and meet on the 28th? Is everybody available?
It would work for me.
Works for me. Yep.
Looks good.
As you're all looking, sorry, the other thing is, I guess if you want to do it 7 o'clock still or 6 or, you know, time as well, just something to think about. We could also probably establish that after we know the date.
Ginny, should we wait 2 weeks and not do it next week? I mean, it seems like there's an awful lot to still be worked out here.
Yeah, no, we need some time to work. So even if you want to go into the first week of November, I know council is November 3rd, you know, but Joe and I do need some time to work with the department heads and revise.
Ginny, is the 28th give you enough time? Or would you prefer that first week of November?
Well, you know me, Luke, I'll take as much time as I can have because we have so many different things going on. Because not only are we working on budget, but we're also working on audit. Okay. So, you know, but I also do not want to any way make you feel uncomfortable or short-sighted or stressed in time or anything like that. So
what's the due date, Ginny, that the council has to approve the budget by?
The tentative budget would be voted upon on the 17th for any changes, which takes 2/3 of the vote. Yeah. And then those changes will be incorporated for the public hearing at least a week before it is adopted. Then it will be adopted on December 2nd.
So with approval of the tentative budget required on November 17th, I believe you said?
Yes.
I don't think it's advisable to go later than the 28th for the next meeting. You're going to be pushing people right up against the wall there with some possibly difficult decisions.
Right. Yeah. So that's why I had originally picked the 27th. I thought that would hopefully work. It would give us about 2 weeks to work with the numbers.
I'm good with the 28th.
Yeah, 28th
so it looks like we have a majority for the 28th of October.
Mayor, does the 20th work for you? Okay, so let's set it for the 28th. And do you want 7 o'clock?
Yeah, 7 works for me.
Okay.
Who's buying the pizza?
We'll have it delivered.
I think traditionally the person who asks about it.
Okay, I'll send one slice over to your house, Luke.
No, the meeting's in Len's backyard and he's providing pizza and beer.
Absolutely. And Dave's got the hops so that we can make the beer.
Okay, the last item for tonight's meeting, Mayor, is up to you if you would like to go into executive session to discuss some payroll issues.
It's not up to me. It's up to the council. I know that that was your thought. It's getting late. I'll leave it up to how necessary it is to address it now and whether the council feels up to it or wants to hold off.
I vote get it over with.
Yeah, I'd rather, let's
Do
go
it.
into executive session, hear
Let's
what
do
you
it.
have to say. And
Okay, so I'll need a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make the motion. We go to executive.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Scott, second by Luke. All in favor, just raise your hand, would be fine. Aye. And now somebody has to do the magic, transposing.
If you could
That's
bear
on you,
with me
Scott.
for 1 second, that feature seems to be missing at the moment. You could bear with me.
Gary, we expect so much out of you.
And I
Scott,
can't even beam you up. I mean,
Scott, could you do that again while we're waiting? It's entertaining.
Mayor, would it be advisable to maybe just ask the folks at home to cover their ears so we don't have to put Carrie through it?
I don't think that will work.
Luke, that's back to Wayne's World. That was probably way before.
Not way before. Not way before.
While we're waiting for Carrie's expertise, I would appreciate some feedback from council members to let us know if you liked the presentation and the format of tonight's meeting, if you want to see changes in the future. That way it'll give Joe and I some feedback to work with to make things better for you, to see what changes you would like. For example, if next year at this time you want us to present you a balanced budget first shot out of the box, we can do that. But anyway, just give it some thought. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, and we can improve and expand. And I also want to thank Joe. He's very talented at making the presentation on the PowerPoint. So I thank him for all of his wonderful talent there.
Just templates.
I thought the presentation was very good, both Joe and Jenny. I think you guys did a great job. It simplified things. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. I'll add my thanks as well.
Same here. Thank you.
Thank you for not putting it in Excel.
Well, like I said, any feedback. So if, like I said, we want to give you what you need to make your decisions. We want to make it as simple or as detailed as you want, and we'll honor your requests.
Joe, with the change in permissions, are you able to see the breakout room button on the bottom right under more? Joe?
Sorry, what? Yeah, under more, what about it?
Are you able to see one that indicates breakout room?
Does that need a break? No, sorry. I was trying to see if there was a way I could reach. Oh, wait. No. No, there's a picture of a coffee that says need a break. That's the only thing. I can thumbs up, thumbs down, clap.
The security settings, it's a toolbar down at the bottom.
Like 3 dots.
Yeah,
Enable waiting room.
nope, not that one.
Oh, well,
All right, council, I apologize. For some reason, breakout room option it's not here. I won't tell you which one of you paid me off so you didn't have to go into executive session, but unfortunately, I'm not able to accommodate one for you tonight.
There is another way, Carrie, right? Can't we exit this meeting and then go to a new one that is not broadcast?
I can create an entirely new meeting. I can also end the live stream function on this one.
That would work if you end the live stream function, correct?
Yep. And then I'll just remove headphones and watch the screen for you, someone to wave that you're back.